And some of those are even willing to pay a little bit of their pay as well. So the recommendation that I made was that people or students who already have a debt, we need to connect them, find out where they're at, and then connect them with those employers. And some of them might require a special type of training. I know some schools do that, others, but I don't think that it is a statewide effort. So you will find pieces of that in a small, patches of things in a state. One school is doing, one community is doing. And the other thing is that, okay, well, whether you lower the interest rate, or you go higher or whatever, I think there is definitely a need of mentoring statewide. So it's very, very critical that we need to guide these students so that they graduate with higher training and GPA. And that can start as early as high school. We have very good MATC College and UW campuses, so we can connect with all of those people early on and then have some other internship opportunities and others. The other thing that I recommended is that, this problem of debt is not going to go away soon. So what are the other sustainable models when we don't have to rely 100% all the time on these kinds of funds? So talking to so many students, not only in Wisconsin, but outside, nobody's interested in really saying that, I just need a grant program and I'm done with it. They're okay with interest-free financing. They're willing to pay it back as long as we can help them with higher GPA and graduation rate and connecting them with those who are looking for that kind of opportunity. And if you create one of the 501c3 nonprofit organization where there are people that I talk with who are willing to donate funds for that, then you recycle funds. When you increase the graduation, you just get that money back and do it. So those are some of my thoughts based on the feedback that I got from people and the people that I work with in the industrial sector. So those were part of my more focus on the solution side of it and enhance the graduation rate for the better everyone.
Thank you, Masood. Does anybody else have any questions about for Masood about this? You're such a quiet group. So I'm not sure how you want to go about voting or choosing our top 2 recommendations. Maybe we could just all enter our top 2 in the chat and see if we're close to a consensus. And because I didn't hear any objection to my, my suggestion that we just say that Veterans Affairs, the 2 Veterans Affairs ones, the financial literacy and the Wisconsin EdVest, which we are already doing, so that's not really a solution because we're already doing it. If no one has any objection to us just saying we think these are good ideas, in addition to any of the other ones that are more, I think, solution-based to the student debt problem. Great. So, do you all want to just type in what your top 2 are?
Oh, Connie.
Oh,
hey,
yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. I do have a poll, and I'm about to send it in the. It'll be in the side panel.
I just want to tell our group that having Marco as a help person for my facilitation is the best. So thank you, Marco. So we each get to select our top 2.
Yep, and only task force members can vote.
And Connie, this is Kimani, Kimani Alford, of course. So
hi, Kimani.
Hi. So we're only selecting 2 from the list. Are we having any discussions about any of the proposals?
I think maybe after we, well, do you want more information about some of them? We could either do the discussion ahead of time, or we could all vote and then talk about why we think those are the best.
Either or
And
is fine. Whatever.
I mean, I'm willing to do anything. This is a new process for me.
Yes, I was looking at the emergency grants one from that a CM submitted, and I understand, of course, it's definitely one that I support from my own experience within higher ed. But there are a couple things that are roles in reading the information. One is, of course, the whole history and background of emergency grants is that it helps to deal with unexpected emergencies. In some cases, to help with student retention. When we're focusing specifically on reducing loan debt, emergency grants don't necessarily reduce debt because it's an unexpected emergency that happens in some cases. But I mean, I could see, depending on the direction, that if the state was to adopt this and implement an emergency grant program, where it could help supplement a student from needing to borrow a student loan, but you will have multiple situations where you might have in the middle of the term where a student might have already taken out their loans, would need an emergency grant. And the flip side of it is any funding that comes as far as in the form of an emergency resource, that money has to be added on to the student's award letter. So in some cases, it can be an addition that's added onto the student's award or offer letter at the school, but it also could serve as a means to reduce any loan debt that they have. So if my cost of attendance was $10,000, I already had $9,500, and then I got an emergency grant for $1,000, my loan would have to be reduced by $500, which would end up reducing the debt. So it's a different perspective, and since I thought that needs to be called out when we're talking about emergency grants as well, because it serves a two-pronged approach. It's the retention aspect of it for institutions, but it also could serve as a mechanism to reduce some loan debt or loan borrowing.
So that's really helpful. And so emergency grants are given to students, and are they ever given to students before they start a semester?
Not necessarily, because a lot of institutions want to make sure that the student is a student and that they're attending. So
okay,
classes would have had to start. So it have to be like the first day of the term moving forward in order to receive that funding. And then, of course, depending on what the process is, they might have to turn in documentation in order to serve the reporting requirements, because depending on who's administering and providing the funding, they might want specific documentation to be captured.
that makes a lot of sense.
So Connie, this is Joan Bowling. So I think we have different concepts of emergency grant. The program that we had here in Wisconsin for emergency grants had nothing to do with a individual student loan package. It was when someone had something that came up while they were a student, that there was a up to a $500 grant for a student. So if they needed to, they had a health emergency, or they had to buy new tires for the car to get into school, and so it wasn't anything that affected the student grant program. So I don't think we're talking about the same thing here when we were talking about student grants.
Yeah, but
That makes total sense.
yeah, and
Go ahead,
this proposal from Ascendium, it talks about the unexpected financial crisis that the student is experiencing, the health aspect of it if they have an unexpected repair. That's what's basically documented here from what I'm looking at, which taps into the whole retention aspect of, because they even allude to the DASH grants that they provided in the past. And I know like WTCS offers emergency funding as well. for students. So it is definitely can be a different spectrum, but if we're moving in the direction as far as just provide emergency grants from a state aspect of it, that criteria will have to be called out. But the concept of emergency grants usually is for that unexpected expense that arises.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, but it was a grant for students, and it wasn't anything that was attached to their student loans or anything else. It was money that was given to them in this particular instance, and they had no responsibility for repayments.
Representative Baldwin and Kimani, I think that your information is extremely helpful, and maybe we should just be sure that we all understand that this option A is not going to in any way really help with the student loan debt problems. Am I reading that right?
That's what.
Correct. It's a retention. Option.
Right. The only way that I see can impact student debt from a financial aid administrator's aspect of it is the student that is at their cost of attendance and they don't have access to additional funding. An emergency grant could come in. It would just end up replacing loan debt and reducing debt that way, but it doesn't necessarily target reducing debt because emergency grants have to be added into a student's award package in order to be considered for the student to even get it.
Okay. So does anyone have thoughts on any of the other ones that they want to bring up? I mean, my understanding for loan counseling is that, and again, having financial aid directors and professionals on the call is very helpful. But for loan counseling, my sense is that you do that a lot already. But if you know a student is taking up their maximum, even though they may not need their maximum, and you explain to them why that's not a good idea because it just increases their debt, they still can get it if they want to, because that's law, right? Is that right, Kimani?
Wait, say that again, Connie.
So if you tell a student you can get $5,000, but your cost of attendance and all that is only really $3, so you should only take out $3. And then you explain it to them, they still can take the $5 out. You can't prevent them, can you?
Well, if the cost of attendance is our ceiling to be able to allow a student to receive aid. So if we don't do anything behind the scenes in order to increase the cost of attendance for that student, if they're eligible for $5,000 but only have allowance for $3, they can only receive the $3.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments on the other ones?
Hi, Connie. This is Sylvie here. Kind of to go off earlier from what Kimani was speaking of. So when it comes to kind of loan counseling, he was speaking of cost of attendance, which is completely correct. But what myself and what our advisors do in our office is usually we don't advise on deterring students from choosing one option or another. It's more or less just explaining the fact of if you have $5,000 in a loan, however, maybe you only need $2,000, perhaps only take what you need. Understanding that if a student, receives a refund after disbursement and they, after accepting the allotted amount of $5,000, should they choose to, not receive the excess, they can send it back to their equivalent of a bursars or billing office and they can return it to the lender. Typically what we do is just try to inform students that we don't want to, say this is bad or this is good, essentially, but just try to get them to understand that if you do these certain actionable items, these certain outcomes are going to happen. Of course, it's still up to the student's discretion on what they would like to do. But yes, if the cap is hit for the allotted cost of attendance, what a student is allowed up to aid, then obviously nothing can be built on that. Going back quickly to the emergency grants, our Dean of Students office here on campus, we have it split where we used to have emergency grants granted for students. So students would contact Dean of Students office, They would submit required paperwork, and if something came up as an emergency, if they were approved, were granted that. The other portion of the office is what is for use for medical tuition credit, MTC. To my understanding, that's a separate budget. So if students still had something, by law feasible or required for anything, medical related, why they had to, drop out from a term or whatnot, they could do that. But as far now, the emergency grants have been used up. So at that point in time.
Sylvie, thank you very much for those explanations and thoughts. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
This is Joan Balwig again. I just wanted to comment on Masood's connecting the dots program, and I appreciate. I think this would be the aspirational ideas that we'd like to see moving forward. But in trying to take a look at, as I mentioned in the last meeting, the need of students versus rewards for academic excellence, I think we're still a long way from being able to invest more money in rewarding those high performing students when we need to support students that don't have the financial backing to be able to make it through school and then be successful coming out on the other side. So as much as I appreciate many of the concepts in the connecting the dots, it's one of those that I won't be able to support. So I just wanted to express that before we got to voting on anything in particular.
Thank you, Representative Balwig. That's really good information too. What is the current status of our current emergency grant program is a question I saw that you asked. Is that specific to each campus?
I think we got through that with that prior conversation.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, Connie. It's Sobe again. So I guess I just wanted to voice my favor for Shannon's proposal for the financial literacy. That is very similar to something that I'm trying to get done on my campus currently as well. There was one portion in her proposal where I believe it was towards the end where she mentioned and explained how there needs to be somewhat like an accountability or an initiative taken to higher education and universities for giving the proper and necessary financial literacy to all incoming students, whether that be freshmen or transfer or non-traditional students of the like. So that's just something that I'm a big proponent of. And definitely that is something I am in favor for with myself trying to implement it on my campus. I'm the type to think that if you are armed with the knowledge, then it is up to your respect and your decision, your discretion as the person to do with what you will with that information, whatever you feel is going to be best for your life, with your choices, etc. But that's just me voicing my overall favor for that type of financial literacy. I believe there's a certain point where a certain initiative needs to be taken where we meet students halfway and give them the information, the knowledge, the resources, the know-how, so that they're able to take what they need and then they can do with it what they will. So those are just my 2 cents on that, but yes.
Sylvie, can you tell me again what campus you're at?
UW Milwaukee.
Okay. I think that's very good information. Does it take extra resources at some campuses to have enough staff to do that with everybody?
So currently how our office works, because I can't, speak for the other UW campuses, and I believe I mentioned this earlier, we do have a regularly staffed financial aid office with our director, with our advisors, and how we kind of scope our advisors to go to the neighboring high schools. To my understanding, our office, I feel, is not, stretched thin with providing resources and the skills to our neighboring high schools, our neighboring community, as well as our campus. I think it just comes down to lack of awareness, especially with all of our incoming freshmen and how they go through, orientation, through the new student orientation and having all that done, which is not something many transfer students get, mind you, because you're transferring in. So it's not readily necessary for them to go through a whole orientation process as an incoming freshman would. And I'm trying to close that gap that every new student you come to a new institution, new university, your financial aid package may be different. One area of concern is that many students seem to think that all UW schools or just universities in general, they're all getting awarded the same kind of way. Like one financial aid package is expected here, so it'll be expected at the next school, when that is not the case, because usually schools are awarded their own budget and then they award accordingly by whatever the student is eligible for. So it's not necessarily, stretched thin and lack of giving resources. It's just about awareness. And to think that students don't know that there's a financial aid on campus, what it means to pay for higher education, especially those students leaving from high school going into higher ed. There's usually a gap of information about what it means to come here and take your classes, start enrolling, but you have to understand those are classes. This is a school that you now have to pay for. So that's just something myself and our office, what we're really trying to bridge. So.
Sylvie, that's very helpful. Thank you. And congratulations on the work you're doing in your office.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
This is Shannon. That's super refreshing to hear. And I just wanted to say where I'm coming at, why I'm so passionate about the literacy is because, once the money has been borrowed, there's only so much any one of us or anyone in the federal government can do to help students. And usually that's, income-based repayment plans. Loan forgiveness, I think, is something that's going to be very difficult to achieve. Certainly under the administration we have now federally. And it's a burden on everyone once the money has been borrowed, if it's not being borrowed thoughtfully. So to me, the literacy, and I know in the past we've said, well, we can't force students to take it. I agree. But all we can do is put the information out there. And with the hope that with enough information, students will stop over borrowing and getting themselves into debt that they can't repay. So it is something I'm very passionate about and would be willing to put some serious resources into figuring out how to make this work if it's one of the solutions we decide to go with.
I think that's great. I think that's it's important for people to, I don't think that a lot of students, when they take out loans, understand that the consequences of missing payments and the benefits of paying more than you have to, those kinds of things as well. So I think that was really good. Those are really good thoughts, Shannon. Thank you. Anyone else? Well, maybe we should, if no one else has anything to add, maybe
Connie,
we can. Yes,
could
go
I
ahead.
could I ask a question? Because we just heard those presentations today from the Savi group and from Vault, which sounded
Yes.
very interesting in ways to promote some of that, especially for our businesses. I could see that the Vault program could be beneficial to businesses where Savi was something that would be available for everyone, whether they were self-employed or as they talked about, contract employees, things like that. So is there and we just heard those presentations today. So has there been any thought or any further discussion about how this would actually work on for state employees? We didn't talk about that specifically, but did whoever worked with them to get that presentation done, was there any discussion about how that would even work with our employees?
Well, my understanding, because I actually saw a presentation from Savvy and brought this to the attention of the task force early on. My understanding of what they do is they basically go through and help you figure out where your loans are from, because there are some places where if you refinance a loan, that you might lose some benefits such as public service loan forgiveness. But they know all of that information and they can help you refinance where it's possible. I've heard from people who have used the tool because the National Education Association has a partnership with them. And I've talked to some staff and heard of some staff who have used it with their teacher members to significantly reduce their debt. And also it's kind of a tool that really helps explain to people what their debt is, where they have to pay, what happens when they don't pay. I mean, I'm sold on them. So, and it's, I think when they're talking about statewide, it's not just, it would be for anybody, whether you're a public school teacher or whether you worked for the state or some other government entity, or whether you work for any individual company. I believe, or if you're self-employed. I think that's I think that's what I heard them say, is that they can work with anyone with student debt. Doesn't matter where you're employed.
Thanks, Connie.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Just to clarify, for the Savvy and Vault, the presentations we had today, if that was something we wanted to bring up to the governor as a means of just, giving it some thought or having it like as a proposed review, is it something we could just sort of advocate for to the governor and just say, hey, just hypothetically speaking, maybe we believe the intentions of both of these private entities, that they might actually be beneficial to the state and all of our denizens here, those with student loan debt. Is that something maybe we could advocate for if that's something we wanted to do?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that we, as a task force, if you have a recommendation, even if it's not like this is our solution, I think that we can definitely do that. So, Marco, can you make the polling options bigger? Or I'll just put on my glasses, never mind.
The PDF, I can zoom in a bit.
That would be great. Thank you.
Does this help?
That's good.
Oh, went too far.
This is good, thank you.
There.
But Connie, we have, I know these are arranged in different buckets, but there are pieces under planning for college that all the pieces that are listed are not necessarily items that would be supported. So
Right.
that I'd individually support. So do we need Do we need more options in this voting rather than the simplified buckets that you've put together? Or maybe nobody else
Well-
thinks so.
Actually, Marco, can you explain how the polling option is, the polling is done again?
Yeah, so it'll show up in the side panel and it'll be these buckets and you just pick 2 of them. And Secretary Blumenfeld wanted us to use these buckets to get similar solutions put together in an overarching category.
Oh, so we're voting on each bucket.
Yep, so you'll vote on 2 of these buckets, and then the top 2 will be what we'll discuss in our next meeting as a large group.
Oh.
Connie, this is Michelle. If I could enhance that response from Marco.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, so Marco's right in that we're focusing on these buckets, but once you identify your top 2 bucket areas, then you can take the meeting and delve into the individual bucket and identify what about that bucket is best, if you will, and maybe merge proposals together to identify your new altered solution, if you will, within the bucket. So this is an opportunity for your discussion group to take that bucket and take the best of the proposed solutions within the buckets to maybe make a new proposed solution, if you will, or an alter or amended one where you're identifying the best of that your discussion group can support, and that be what you discuss with the full task force, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Thank you, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So should we do would anyone object to us doing a vote on top buckets?
Objection.
Who said that? Oh, you said no objection?
No objection.
Oh, thank you. All right. So Marco, do we tell you or do we mark them? Okay, so we all get to check our favorite, right? So can everybody do that?
Yeah, Connie, I believe Marco made the poll live, so you just pick the 2
Great.
solutions from the list.
And then hit submit. Got it. And then let us know when everyone is submitted.
Is anyone still working on their poll?
Guess not.
All right, I will close the poll.
Hooray, are you going to announce the winners?
Can you see the results?
No results yet, Marco. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They just came on.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, so
Financial literacy and loan counseling. Does anyone have any comments about these or anything that they want to share that would enhance what we mean by this?
Well, this is Joan. I think those choices meet the criteria of what our subgroup is supposed to be taking a look at here. But I also see that one item that was in the planning for college with
Right.
the FAFSA could also be part of that. Could be part of that proposal.
That's true. That is true. Because that actually kind of goes along with both, either loan counseling or financial literacy. I mean, if you don't file the FAFSA, you're not going to get any loan counseling. But we'll just make sure that can we just include that as part of loan counseling? Now, Michelle, you said we're supposed to narrow this down to what we really think we should be doing.
So within those two buckets now, those two would be your two main proposals that you present. But when you present, you talk about from those papers, if you will, if you support them in full, merging them together, or is it one of the two papers that dominates? Sorry, I have the other meetings in the background. I forgot. So yes, you can now concentrate on just one of the buckets to see if one of those two proposals is dominant, and it's everything about it that you encompass and like and want to move forward, or if there's pieces from both of them that you are merging together to make your full task force group proposal. And then you do that with the other bucket as well. Does that help?
I'm not sure.
I think loan counseling was one of the results, correct?
Right.
Okay, so within loan counseling, there are two papers, the improved loan counseling practices and the tech integrated platform for borrowers. So, which is the Savvy solution we just saw during the meeting. So is it, which one of these is it that the group really dominates that loan counseling solution because everyone did their worksheets and maybe improved loan counseling practices ranked higher for them because of the items on the worksheet as far as what it was achieving as your recommendation. And Savvy maybe only hits 2 of the 6 items, or the lift could be really difficult. But maybe merging the two together is the ideal solution as well. So how to integrate the two or decide that one of those two proposals is the dominant one in that group and that's what you're going to discuss at the task force meeting.
Okay, great.
This is Diane, just so I'm crystal clear. So like the veteran support didn't get one of our two top go-getters or whatever, vote-getters. So does that mean we're not going to be discussing that one now?
Well, one of the things that I said at the beginning is that I don't think that is something that the task force, where it will solve student loan debt. However, I do believe that it's something that we could recommend that we talk to Veterans Affairs about this and recommend, tell them that these are some of the things that came up and see if they would do these two things, add a student and and a Veteran Affairs School Certification official. Because I really think they should do that. I mean, I think that it would be very helpful to them, and it's probably something that they just hasn't been raised before, they haven't thought of.
That's true, or have the funds to do it as well.
And have the funds to do it. And I wouldn't mind just summarizing that when we talk about what we came up with, because I think those are really important.
Yeah, I do too. And I think there's so much confusion with all the programs, the federal and the state programs to help veterans. For
Right.
example, National Guard people, they don't get their tuition, they get tuition remission, so they have to pay upfront this money. And then a lot of them take out student loans, then they get paid on the back end, but they already have these student loans, so they use the money for other things, or, it just gets to be very confusing. So I think sometimes those things could be solved by somebody taking a closer look at it.
Okay.
Thank you for letting me know how that's moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And also, I would say that Education Approval Board, which is now the Education Approval Program, I really don't understand what changes they made. Do they have less authority now? But I know that for-profit schools do target veterans, and that's I don't know if that's something that we can also mention, is that, I mean, do either of the two representatives on here know what changes there were when you decided to abolish the Education Approval Board and put it into a program?
I think this is where Joan and I agreed, but go ahead, Joan.
Sure. So I think the main thing is the money that was collected was held to be able to reimburse students if there was some kind of failure in that particular system. And part of it was because with our connection to the MSARA program, there was the necessity to have a board that was going to be reviewing all those applications that were coming in from out of state. So once we agreed that we would use kind of a centralized system that both our institutions would apply to, and the thing that came up is if you had a student from Wisconsin that wanted to go to a certain program, then they would have to apply to Wisconsin. So if they were going to a centralized location to get their approvals, then it gave more opportunity for Wisconsinites to be able to use other programs, and it was a benefit to our Wisconsin institutions, both private and public, to attract students from around the nation.
Okay. And when you say private and public, do you mean private not-for-profit, or both private for-profit and private not-for-profit?
Both. So
Okay.
UW system are independent nonprofits, and our Wisconsin technical systems were all very supportive of being able to go through this, program. So if they had students that wanted to be getting into their programs, they didn't have to apply to 50 different states if they had 50 different students from other states. So it was very much streamlining for them, and enhanced the number of students that were able to access Wisconsin higher education programs.
So when there are problems with the for-profit school, does that go to the education approval group?
Well, actually, and this is something that came up in our last meeting, and I talked with Dr. Wagenke about this on Monday, that it really comes down to the consumer protections you have in each state. And I was thinking that possibly our presenter last time was giving, you know, a broad picture, not necessarily the Wisconsin picture. So yes, there are things that come up, but it's our consumer protections, which overall are considered pretty strong, that students would be going back to.
Okay, thank you.
It used to be the EAB, right? It used to be their job until a few years ago when ITT Tech came out and had a lot of problems all over the place, but especially in Madison, they were able to help those students. So it just got shifted, really.
Correct.
And I can speak to that too. This is Shannon Conlon. I work at Department of Justice in the Consumer Protection Division within the Public Protection Unit. We also have authority to investigate. Usually we do it hand in hand with EAP, but we also have the ability to and currently have investigations ongoing with, it's primarily for-profit schools, but any school that's you know, being
Right.
the students.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
I'm always happy. I'm the Assistant Attorney General at DOJ that handles all of those. If anyone ever had questions or wanted to bounce an idea or talk about something, please feel free to reach out to me aside from this task force.
Thank you, Shannon. Well, these are the two that we're going to submit, and I need to write a paper combining, you know, the things that are inside there. How about if I take this on and get something to everybody by the end of the week, and then you can send it back and add things or tell me what, you know, what should be different or taken out? Would that work for everybody before we submit them to Secretary Blumenfeld and the group?
That sounds great, Connie. That's a lot of extra work for you, but I think that would be helpful, that we could bounce things off, given that reflection, and go from there.
Great. And when I write something up and I send it out, I have absolutely no problem when people say, I don't like this and you should have added this. I mean, it's just a draft. So I really would be looking for real feedback. Shannon, were you going to say something?
I was going to say I'm happy to help with anything you need as well.
Oh, you're awesome. Thank you. You're all awesome.
You're all awesome.
Hi, Connie. Just a quick point. And my chat could have cut out if this was being discussed earlier, but I believe somebody was mentioning one of the bullet points for the Planning for College bucket about the FAFSA. I don't know if you could just kind of like pool that in with one of our buckets already, either the literacy education or the counseling, because usually what we do when we do our presentations and whatnot is completing the FAFSA is a hard-hitting point for us. That's usually one of our top those are one of our top points that we educate students on. What is the FAFSA, how to complete it, what aid means, and what the possible eligibility met for what you could be granted for like grants and loans and whatnot. So I don't know if that's something we could do or we can't do. I'm sorry if I missed.
I think we can do anything. And I just wrote down, make sure I add that into financial literacy, because I do believe, and thank you for bringing that up. I wouldn't have thought of it, but I do believe that that is part of the financial literacy for college.
Sure, that's great. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure because it was cut out. So, and if you do need anything else, please feel free to reach out. So I'd be willing to help.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Connie, this is Michelle, and I mean, no stepping on any toes, but I would just like to remind everybody that if you proceed with the draft and comments back, that they should go directly to you. So we given open meetings in the public process, and it's a decision that your group is making.
Okay.
Real cautious of that everything is
Oh, yeah.
transparent and with that. So, you know, I don't know if Marco's in a position to bring up one of those papers or how you want to use the rest of your meeting time. If you want to start that discussion now, however you choose to do that, but I just wanted to put that reminder out there for everyone.
Yeah, I figure everything I do that I put in writing is subject to
No,
open record, so.
Yep, and I know others on the call or the meeting are definitely aware of that process, but just it's a
But not everybody
mix
is,
of
you are right.
numbers.
Thank you. I would rather not start doing a group drafting because I think it'll take too long and be too confusing. And I'm not hearing any objections to that, not even in the chat, although you can't do it anonymously. But like I said, I have no personal feelings in this. So I don't mind if you have things that you would rather I do or better ideas. I'm sure some people have better ideas, which is why I offered to write a draft, not a final report. So we don't have to use up the other 2 hours. We could all tell personal stories or something if you want to stay on the line. Am I still talk? Can you still hear me?
Yes, you can. You're being funny. Thank you. I think you're so cute. You're great.
I'm just chatting away here. Well, without objection then, I propose we end the meeting. Are there any objections? Yes. I mean, great. Thank you all. And really, thank you for participating in this. The ideas that have come out of this and the work that people have done and the thoughts that they've shared, it doesn't matter what happens to these proposals. I have learned a lot. It's helping me with my job as head of the Higher Educational Aids Board, working with the financial aid directors. So I appreciate everybody's thoughts. And I will get something out to you later this week.
Thanks, Patty. And I appreciated all of these area experts getting together. That whether you're in higher education or DOJ or wherever you're at, there's a lot of people that are working on these issues, and it's great that we're getting together to talk about them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I used to be a teacher, so I'll just say class dismissed. Thanks, everybody.